And still staying with the energy sector now, the Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation says no fewer than 14 crude oil export terminals in the country were shut down in the month of April and May this year owing to power outage and pipeline leakage. NNPC in its latest monthly report says a total of 4.36 million barrels of oil could not be produced in the period as a result of the shutdowns, leading to a total shut-in of 441,443 barrels of oil. The corporation also adds that there was production shut-in at Ejina Terminal for 8 days from April the 1st to 6th and 13th to the 1st due to power outage, coupled with shutdown due to faulty transmitter on cooling water pump. The report further reveals that an emergency shutdown at Agbami Terminal on April the 9th as well as the 15th due to pressure build-up and safety instrumentation system tests in Agbami 3, 29 and 37 caused a total loss of 105,076 barrels of oil. Well, joining me now via Skype is energy consultant Sheson Kwade. Good to have you on the Breakfast Show today.
Good morning, David. It's a pleasure to be here, and thank God it's Friday.
Now, one of the biggest conversations we've had so far is looking at OPEC cuts, oil production, and improving on our refining capacity. But at this point in time, where we are having this report from the NNPC saying that we lost about 4.36 million barrels of oil in the month of April and May, this raises question as to what sort of infrastructure we have, and are we intentional at all if we're looking at improving our production and refining capacity?
Oh, thank you very much, David, for having me. You and I know the challenges we have faced with our oil production, and we have said it over time, the kind of dilapidated infrastructure that we have. We all know that as we speak, crude oil are being derived from the country, and our refinery capacity is very, very poor. Majority of the infrastructure that we have today are what that have been on ground for over 50 years. They are not state-of-the-art production, and they cannot even refine what is expected of us. From the report you read, you hear that so many of those transmitters were shut down,
Exactly.
not only because of the reduction in the production of crude oil that we have, but because they are not state-of-the-art. They have a specific number that is expected of them to produce. But because there is a slight adjustment from the instruction from OPEC because of the pandemic that we faced, we discovered that they could not react, positively to this. And it has called, it is the same thing that we have actually been calling on, that some of this infrastructure needs to be replaced. We need to work on them, and it is high time we must put back some of this refinery for us to be able to refine our crude oil and make them available so that the end consumer can have great benefit of why God has blessed us with this crude oil. Not until when we have some of this change, we are not going anywhere. And it's going to continue to have a repeated occurrence until they are actually replaced.
Okay, so now let's talk about the size, how robust an investment plan we need to have still within the oil and gas sector. Yes, it's time to diversify the economy and invest much more strongly in other key sectors of the economy, such as agriculture, the services, manufacturing, and a whole lot more. But looking at the current lull we have in our oil and gas sector, we still need quite a huge pump of investment to be able to sustain efforts that we've had over the past few years and then have some little proceeds to still fuel the other streams of income and our cash cows, talking about the diversified key points we are making reference to.
Yeah, part of what we have said is that we encourage the government to go into private-public partnership in some of this infrastructure that we have, considering that the business of government in everything that they do is just to provide the basic policy and infrastructure in place. You discover that if we go into the private-public partnership, where individuals who are business owners are able to venture into the production of some of these things, we discover that government will be able to concentrate on some other things that are meant even for governance. But it is a situation where it is the government and the government agencies that are solely responsible for this kind of a thing. We will continue to meet with failure. The business of government is not to do this, is to provide policy that will enhance business activities for everybody to do. Say there are several people who are willing to invest more in that particular sector. But because the policy are just not in place, and considering the huge capital expected in this sector, we discover that they are not actually encouraged to do this kind of a thing. So we want to encourage the government to put in the right policy for private-public partnership. Where individuals can venture into some of those things and does not have some assaulted policy for us to grow the sector.
Thank you very much for your contribution on the Breakfast Show today, Sheson Okwade. And the anticipation remains that we don't have as much loss recorded in the third and last quarter of the year, looking at how much we've lost and how much is expected to be done and what sort of revenue would have generated with that production. Now, talking about building our infrastructure at this point in time, in terms of attending to some of the current deficits that we have within the oil and gas sector infrastructure, what should be our focus in terms of dealing or nipping all of these loopholes at this point in time?
Yeah, if you see the report that we had of the failure that happened in the month of April and May, we all know that the pandemic gave a reactionary issue on the things that we have. The government just need one or two things to make sure they get the things back on track. Some of the infrastructure development that will require to make the system get back to track is to build new refineries. Can we have a self-sustaining attitude first before we even consider making more? Meeting some of the things that generate revenue for us are bad. Can we engage the private sector, invest money and put some of these things in place for easy transmission of some of this crude oil? The transmitters that we have are already weakened. This thing needs a complete rebuilding of refinery to transmit some of these things. It's just in this part of this world that you do not service the things that generate income for you. And the only thing you try to do is to carry out replacement continuously of even things that you know have failed. So we have actually requested that new refineries be made for some of those things that we need to do to generate revenue to have the state of the art. Until this is done, we will continue to meet with failure and our revenue will continue to nosedive.
At this point in time where we are looking at improving on our revenue generation capacity, it is quite critical to invest in strategic areas and talking about the infrastructure that supports the oil and gas sector. That cannot be overlooked. Thank you very much for your time on The Breakfast Show today, Sheson Okwade.